This is A Fit Mess with Zach and Jeremy.
Hello and welcome to The Fit Mess. I am Jeremy along with Zach as usual.
What's up, everyone?
Thanks for being there. Thanks for downloading the show. We're going to be talking about a topic today that I think many of you might find on the deeper end of the pool in the woo-woo category. I know for me, 2 years ago, that definitely would have been the case. Even a year ago, that would have been the case. But we are talking about breath work and the many benefits that it can have to help you deal with all sorts of emotional and, surprisingly even to me, physical benefits that it can have. Our guest in just a few minutes is going to be author Lauren Chelec Cafritz. She is the author of the new book, Breath Love. She is touring the country right now talking about that book, and we had a chance to chat with her. We'll get to that interview in just a little bit. But this happens sort of at an interesting time for me, Zach, and in the conversation we were just having, for both of us. We both sort of seem to be in a period of reset with our routines, with the things that we're doing to sort of take care of ourselves.
Yeah, it's been an interesting week. Last week I was really just kind of feeling I'd really gotten out of all of my habits. I hadn't worked out in a little bit. I hadn't done yoga. Hadn't really been practicing any breathing or mindfulness or anything like that. And I tend to go big or go home. So I decided this week to reset and get everything going again. So I started CrossFit, which I've never done before. And it's on par with like the level of workout that I'm doing, but it's harder. It's got weights included. And I started eating keto again.
If I can really quick, I hear the term CrossFit thrown around a lot. Is that basically like an aerobic workout with weights? Because I've never done it either. I'm just curious.
Yeah, it's just a pretty intense workout. So I'm doing a little subset of it right now with them, and this one is more of they're not using barbells, they're not using pull-up bars. It's kind of like a CrossFit light, but you could think of it, it's kind of like Insanity with some weights involved. So
okay.
There's a little bit more cardio involved, but once you move over to the CrossFit arena, then there's the weightlifting parts, there's the cardio parts, and then they throw in some like gymnastics stuff, like using rings and doing pull-ups on rings and
this
stuff
sounds
like that.
Exhausting. I'm tired listening to you.
It is. Even just the one that I did, there was this one move where they had me put a 35-pound weight in my hand over my head and then do walking lunges across the room. And my quads hurt more than they've ever hurt in my entire life. Like I'm going down the stairs backwards because they hurt so much.
My legs hurt listening to this. I've been on my ass for like the longest time. And part of it is, that my kids' school routine it's different this year than it was last year, and I'm a bike commuter as much as possible. The bike that I rely on has been dead for weeks and weeks now. I think I'm actually going to be buying one tomorrow, which is very exciting. But that has been sort of the cornerstone of any physical fitness that I do, and it's been off the table. I haven't been able to do it. And so then that just creates a cycle of, oh, well, I didn't work out today. It's not a big deal if I don't do it tomorrow. You know what? Next week I'll get things back. I'll get things back on track. Mm-hmm. And it just, once one piece of the Jenga puzzle is pulled, the rest of it just comes tumbling down. And without that, I'm not going to the gym. I'm not doing any kind of like yoga or anything to supplement. I'm eating like a 7-Eleven dumpster. Just garbage. I'm not taking care of myself. And just, full disclosure, doing this show right now, I'm exhausted because I can feel that I'm not taking care of myself the way that I need to. It's leading to poor sleep. It's leading to not meditating, not doing the breath work that we'll be talking more at length about here in a few minutes. But it's just so interesting how it is a house of cards. So often that you build this thing up, and if one piece crumbles, it just creates, ironically, a big mess.
Interesting choice of words,
right?
But it is crazy, and sometimes though I really appreciate this moment in my life, right? Because when you do get into a habit and you're feeling good, and every day is feeling good, I use these as a positive reinforcement, right? I feel like shit for a couple of weeks. And to me, I look at that and say, there's my reminder.
Yep.
That's why I have these routines. That's why I do all these things to make myself feel better, because I don't want to feel like this anymore. So sometimes I need a good reminder, and the last couple of weeks have been a good reminder for me. So I'm fully on board getting back onto all the habits that I need to do.
Yeah. And for me, part of that has been just really trying to hit the reset button in really small ways. And it is like I think you mentioned that you're back on the keto diet. I'm trying to do my vegetarian version of that. And to some degree, I've been moderately successful, kind of dipping my toes in the water, getting back into it, trying to just get comfortable with it as a concept.
I just don't quite get that, though. Like, the whole point of eating keto for me is the fact that I can eat a big fat steak every night. I just don't know how you do that vegetarian.
It's not easy. I will. There is a reason that pretty much any meal delivery service that you can get, anywhere you look online, you're really going to struggle to find how to do keto in a vegetarian lifestyle, because it does to some degree rely on processed meat alternatives and a lot of cooking and prep, because it's a lot of vegetables that you're not going to just sit down and eat raw. You need to do something to them to make them not taste like vegetables. So
right.
It's hard, and that honestly is one of the big barriers, and it's one of the things that every now and then I think, you know what, maybe for a month I should try doing it just with meat and just see how that feels. But that's a big moral leap for me to take.
I was just going to ask, like, what would it take to do that? But if it's a moral ground you're trying to stay on, that's worthwhile.
Yeah. Well, and I got an email the other day from I'm on a bunch of different mailing lists, but I got something from Bulletproof, and it was like talking about the Bulletproof diet and how to do it, and can you do it as a vegetarian? And he, goes through and lists like, oh, if it's because of the way animals are treated or the way they're raised and all this. I'm like, it has nothing to do with that. I just don't think that I need to eat another living being to survive. So far I haven't, but I don't know, because I haven't made that, the decision to take that experiment and see how far it goes. But it's always in the back of my mind is my point.
I think you should, because just from my own experience, I am not a vegetarian, and I have no intention of ever stopping eating meat unless it's some experiment for a short period of time. And it's like my favorite thing in the whole world.
Just eating meat is your favorite thing in the whole world?
Yeah, it's how I was raised. I was raised eating raw hamburger, so I just love it.
A loving and warm childhood is what I'm visioning.
Well cared for.
Ironically, in terms of sort of getting back to basics, if I can borrow a lame phrase, to me, breathwork and meditation are very much aligned, if not the same thing. Our guest may disagree. I don't know. I didn't ask her, but to me, they're kind of two sides of the same coin, where just focusing on your breath, breathing intentionally, is a great way to reset your nervous system, is a great way to really give your body the air that it needs, because so often, so many of us get tied up in the stress and the just swinging from vine to vine that is our chaotic lifestyle. And it's funny that, to me, we're going through this reset, we're sort of starting over, and I'm reminded that our very first episode was about meditation. And so here we are now sort of hitting the reset button and starting with breath work. And in the last couple of weeks, it has been not a dedicated time of meditation, but just moments of realizing, okay, I'm not acting with intention. I'm just reacting to the day and just taking a moment to take a couple of breaths, hit the reset, and move forward and try and do the next thing. I don't know. Is that sort of what you do? What's your experience with breath work? Have you had much?
I've done a fair amount. I would go back to the comment you made at the beginning of the show on how 2 years ago you would have thought this was a little woo-woo, and I landed on this about 4 years ago, and it was because of yoga. And I hadn't really thought about the breath work aspect of it. And I had a yoga teacher who said that if you just lay down on your mat and you don't do any of the moves, but you breathe. Every time I tell you to breathe, you're doing 50% of yoga. And that really struck me. And that was the moment I realized that yoga, it's not just about the body, it's about the breath work. And that was my journey into figuring out, oh, well, I'm breathing in my chest, not out of my belly. And what does it mean to take a deep breath? And whenever I tried to take a deep breath with my diaphragm, I realized that like I couldn't, because my diaphragm wouldn't move that far. It was kind of a crazy realization, but it, fast forward 4 years and it's a deep breath is all I need to just like reset my mindset.
Yeah, I'm not quite there with you. For me, it's definitely like I need a few moments to take a few breaths, and that sort of helps clear my head and resets everything so that I can face whatever it is that I'm facing. My experience has been very limited. I've only had a couple. One was a significant, very profound experience that I had a few months ago. I think I talked a little bit about it on a previous episode, so forgive me if we end up rehashing some of that. The other was actually just a couple of weeks ago, and it was just prior to talking with our guest. In reading her book, she gives an example of helping somebody with a physical ailment purely by doing some quick breath work with them. Just a stranger doing something, she notices the injury, goes and helps her through the breath work. I'll let her tell the story and sort of share mine through that. But let's start with the basics. We talked with author Lauren Chelec Cafritz about her new book, Breath Love. And we started really just talking about breath work itself and what it is to get a better understanding of it.
There's so many different definitions for breath work. And the typical underlying easy definition is conscious connected breathing that helps bring up material that's been suppressed and repressed. And as you breathe through it and integrate it, you begin to heal whatever's been buried away, and you start to feel better. So for me, breath work is all about using your breath to heal.
As I was reading your book, we were actually supposed to talk a couple of weeks ago. We had a time scheduled, and that day I just read some of your book, and I was getting my daughter out of our car. I lifted her up out of the car seat and I set her down, and my back just locked up. Like I literally was doubled over, could not stand up. And I was in agony and started panicking and just thinking, I'm alone with my 4-year-old. I don't think I can even walk to the front door. Oh my God, what am I going to do? And I immediately flashed to the story in your book about when you helped the injured skier, and just the sort of breathing through that pain and how it helped her. And I immediately just went, oh, do that. And I just started breathing. I just focused on my breath, and it got me to a place where I could at least get inside and start making phone calls and asking for help and doing some things. And so I think it was really interesting how by focusing on my breath, and you can probably explain the science more than I can, but I was able to at least partially heal to get to a place where I could focus better and do more. Was I just calming myself down, or was there something else more going on with that breathing in terms of pain management?
So this is such a fun one to answer because whether you're in labor pain, back pain, emotional pain, when something happens and you first feel that intensity, anything that's unhealed of the same intensity comes flooding through. So some people, might have broken a leg. And so when they hit their arm really hard, the first thing there's a panic that floods through them on top of just the pain that they're feeling. So the breath is a way to pause for a minute, separate a little bit, get grounded and focused, and then be able to move forward with, some wisdom of like, oh yes, if I can get into the house and get my daughter safe and then make some calls. Pain when somebody's in labor, there's so many things. I have a client whose mom told her that, you were the biggest pain ever. Your birth was so painful. When she got pregnant, she spent all 9 months worrying about the birth. And so we started working with feeling pain and breathing with it and getting to the place where she was actually very calm about her birth, and then ended up having this blissful birth. So connecting breath and feeling intensity is a powerful tool.
And I've found that in the last few years, I've been meditating a lot, and yoga also incorporates a lot of breathing. And it's so interesting how the breath can operate as such an anchor to what's really going on in the moment, as opposed to where our mind wants to take us.
Yeah. So stories, when people come to I teach a Monday night class in Washington, D.C., a place called the Mindfulness Center. It's actually Bethesda, Maryland. And every Monday night, I never know who's going to show up. And it's really interesting. And people come in with their stories. My husband doesn't love me. I hate my job. My kids are giving me a rough time. And the minute they start connecting their breath, they can let all the stories go, and they find this deeper peace that begins to happen where they can see things in a much more neutral way, so that when they go back to their kids, they can respond versus react to whatever's going on, if that makes sense.
Definitely. And I think, you make it a reference to The Wizard of Oz in your book, which anytime anyone makes a reference to The Wizard of Oz, I'm in, because that's just one of my favorite stories of all time. But I don't know that I ever really made the connection until I saw it in your book about having the answer within you all along. Like, I mean, I guess it's on a surface level, I always got it, but the way you sort of attached it to having just in terms of breath work, having the ability to heal yourself, to overcome whatever's going on. We all have so many more tools at our disposal that we don't know of because we've gotten so accustomed to searching for external answers in terms of doctors, medication, whatever. So I loved that analogy. And I think a lot of people, myself included a couple of years ago, would have dismissed it as, oh, that's somebody trying to sell a book. That's somebody trying to, sell me something. But it is real. The science behind breath work and meditation, this sort of thing, is real.
So yes. Well, first, I want to go back just for a second because, like you, I love The Wizard of Oz. And, she went all over the place trying to find the answers. But meanwhile, when she finally met Oz, he said, it was always within you. Click your heels. So for me, I think a lot of people will go back to another book analogy. Was it Dr. Seuss? It was like, are you my mother? Are you my mother? Just looking around for the answers. And really, when you take those conscious connected breaths, as you do in breath work, the answers come flooding in. It's the most powerful thing. If I have something going on in my family, something with one of my kids, and, I'm really perplexed, not sure where to go with it, I just close my eyes for 10 minutes and I connect my breath, and then all the answers show up.
So I guess explain that, because I think for someone who maybe isn't familiar with this, they're going to imagine that you're just sitting there breathing. Is there more to it than that? Are there different applications and different ways to breathe to have different results?
Okay, well, two things. One, first, I want to say when they wire up a brain and they have someone just, breathing normally, just doing something but not paying attention to their breath, it lights up their amygdala, the primitive part of their brain. And then if you turn around and ask someone to take some conscious breaths, the prefrontal cortex lights up, which is, the creative part of the brain where you want to spend time. It's where the answers are. It's thinking outside the box. So there is science to, how breath affects you. And like when I teach at a school, I love teaching teachers because then teachers disseminate this information to hundreds of students. And a couple of them come back to me and said, every morning when they come in, we take 10 breaths. One, I've noticed it settles them. But two, I think you're absolutely right, which I love when they say that. They're like, they're doing better on their tests. It put them in the part of their brain where they can do, they can do better. They can do well on a test that normally would have given them a hard time because they were so scattered when they came in. They were much more focused and grounded. So that's just, where you're breathing. The second part I want to bring in is, when you were in pain and your back hurt, and you're in this fight and flight, probably chest breath, which raises your cortisol and adrenaline in your blood, and you just feel horrible, and it's hard to think like that. do you want to play for a minute?
Sure, let's do it.
Okay. So put 2 hands on your belly.
Mm-hmm.
And what I want you to do is take a deep breath in. And as you breathe in, your belly comes out. And as you exhale, the belly button goes towards the spine. And one more. So as you breathe into the belly, and then, kind of a diaphragmatic breath goes from the belly to the chest. Each time you take a diaphragmatic breath, you're telling your central nervous system that you're okay, and your adrenaline and your cortisol drop, and you just start feeling better. So it's easier to handle whatever's going on in front of you when you take even 2 diaphragmatic breaths.
What's interesting about this, my acupuncturist several years ago, I was talking to her about a bunch of stuff that was going on, and she started talking to me about breathing, and she said something, and maybe there is no magic number. You know more about this than I do, but she said something, and I've heard other stories that it's between 4 and 6 deep breaths actually reset your nervous system. So whatever thing you're going through, if you can get through those 4 to 6 breaths, it literally is a reset button on your system. Is that
100%? Yep. But I even say one really deep one.
Yeah.
Because some people are very ADD, and just getting them to take one.
That's funny. And I will say, I've been doing this for 20 years. I've been in this industry for a long time, and every time I do an interview like this, there is a level of anxiety and nerves that it takes me until about halfway through the interview to get through. And it's so funny because every time I think, I should have taken some deep breaths before I started. It would have helped. And just now doing it, I'm way more calm than I was when I started. So it just works. I don't know, I'm not the scientist here. But I can tell you it definitely works.
I'm agreeing.
So we have, I think, similar journeys into this realm of healing. From what I read in your book, you were not the kind of person who you would have associated with being a breathwork coach or working in this field. Can you talk a little bit about your journey and how you got to this point?
Yeah, I laugh because my mom always teases, I grew up in the suburbs eating like Captain Crunch and, tricks are for kids.
Delicious.
Yeah. And if someone said to me, you're going to be a breath worker one day, I'd be like, what? What are you talking about? So, I have my master's in journalism. And when my son was 9 months old, I couldn't turn my neck. And the pain was so bad. It was like a sciatic pain. I didn't know what to do when I went to Western medicine, and one surgeon's like, just don't look up, and I'm going to have to cut at some point. And it was just amazing to me that that I wasn't getting the healing that I needed. And finally, someone took me to a physiatrist that works with the muscle around an area that's been injured. And that started to work, and it was super expensive. And so I asked the PTs in that office, what else can I do? And they're like, go do some massage therapy and some yoga. And anyway, long story short, from yoga, I went to meditation. From meditation, I went to breath work. And it was when I had my very first breath work session that it came to me that, oh my goodness, there's an emotional piece to the pain in my neck. I could see it during the breath session. And I had a full understanding. And by the time the breath session was done, I bolt right sat up and said, why isn't everyone doing this?
I have a quick question about that part. The actual pain that you saw, was it like in the shape of, a shape, or is there some trauma that it triggered that that's what was causing it? Do you know what I mean? Is that question clear?
So yes, and it's a very deep answer. So I'm trying to figure out how to make it fluffy and shorter, which is so then I had very low self-esteem in my early 20s when this happened. And I was trying to be whoever that, the different people in my life, I was newly married, and all these things were going on in my life, my relationship with my parents. And I understood how I was holding all that tension in my neck.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So it wasn't like one major aha during my very first session, but it was the first time where I understood the pain that I was holding wasn't purely physical.
Right. Okay. So from what I understand, holotropic breath work is not necessarily your expertise, but you know a little bit about it. Is that fair?
Yes, holotropic, integrative, transformational, they all have similar pieces.
So my first experience with breath work was just a few months ago. I was at a retreat, and we didn't know what we were getting into from day to day. And one of the days it was some form of holotropic breath work. And through these various breathing rhythms, the music that was being sung, the instruments that were being played, the sage or whatever was being burned in the room, this experience was mind blowing. Literally, I was I don't even know if it's hallucination, but the walls were melting. I was taken to deep memories that were extremely painful. And able to visualize them, to reach out for them, and make a conscious decision to let them go and to let them, I guess, to stop them from having control over me. It was, it was the single most profound personal thing I've ever gone through. I mean, I have kids and a wife, and that all is right up there. But in terms of my own internal work, it just completely blew open my concept of reality and healing and what it takes. So can you explain, I guess, I'm still struggling with, was I hallucinating or was I shown something else that's real that we can't access under our normal conditions?
So what I would say is there's different varieties of breath work. Holotropic is very intense. So melting walls, I'm not surprised. People have pretty intense experiences during a holotropic ride. Integrative breath work is a little gentler. You're going to bring up the same material in a more gentle way. I don't prefer one breath work over another because each person needs a different style to help them, bring up and heal and integrate whatever the material is. So I guess what I want to say is, most people, when they start laying down and connecting their breath, inhale, seamlessly connected to exhale, right back in. It's called a circular breath. They're going to drop into something that they've been suppressing, repressing. It just happens. It's, you're relaxed. The breath is there. Anything unlike the vibration of a breath, right? The breath is a very high vibration. So dense materials, things that were traumatic, have a tendency to come up for you to, because you're comfortable and relaxed while you're doing this and breathing. It's the first time where you have the space to actually allow that material to come up in a safe way, feel it fully, breathe with it, experience it, and then it moves away. And what I've noticed, I don't know if you've noticed it, that as that material heals and moves away, you feel even more energy coursing through you. Did you feel a lot of energy when you were doing breath?
Oh my God. For about a month and a half, my wife was very patient with me because I was on this euphoric high for about 6 weeks where there was literally no challenge I could not accomplish. There was nothing like I felt for the first time like I became the person I was always meant to be. And nothing was going to stop me from just, singing it from the rooftops. And I am not a sing from the rooftops kind of guy. So it was the most incredible thing I've ever felt. And it was hard to hang on to, and even harder now having attained it and not be able to like flip that switch back on and go, I want to feel like that all the time.
So that's why it's amazing to have a daily practice. I don't get out of bed in the morning without connecting my breath from 5 minutes to an hour, somewhere in between, depending on the day, how much time I have. Because during the night, we dream and we get tired and we stress sometimes because whatever we don't process during the day, we process at night. So if you do some of the connected breathing in the morning before you get out of bed, you get that energy, that buzz. I don't do coffee. I don't need coffee. I just go on my day after I do my breathing. So I start clear. And then, going on a retreat once or twice a year to keep having these kind of experiences, finding a breathwork class, doing a week-long anything is going to really shift and change you.
That's what I guess that was going to be my question for you is in my attempt now to chase the dragon and go back to that feeling, if I did that every week, every month, would I sustain that? Or at some point would the monotony of feeling that way just sort of make it wear off?
So it's not monotony. What happens is you process more and more material, and at some point you're just much clearer, and it's much faster and easier for you to clear because you've done so much work on yourself. So I don't get the high buzz that I got when I first started, and at the same time I still get incredible gifts.
It's so interesting. It's powerful stuff, and by the way, it's a fun book to read because it's not just here's how to breathe differently. You have a lot of personal stories, and you really you pack a lot of information into a short read. So thank you for the book. It's very helpful, and the techniques are definitely powerful and useful. And I hope that for anyone who's coming to this unsure, that they would just give it a try and just. Even just now, taking a deep breath, and if you don't feel better, then, I guess I don't know what to tell you. Is there anything important here that we missed that I didn't ask you about?
So thank you so much I'm so glad you enjoyed the book. So in Breath Love, I put so many ideas like the emergency toolkit. So if someone's going through a crisis, the things that you can do right away to help you get grounded and centered. And just so that your listeners know, drinking water moves the motion just like breath does. So water, connect your breath, walk in nature, anything to move your body, do push-ups, you're going to start to feel better. So if nothing else, if anyone wants to know a little bit more, like I gave a very fast definition of breath work, but if you go to breathlove.com, my website, there's more information there about breath work and its definition and some more detail.
Anything else you want to add before we go?
Oh my goodness. There's so many things.
There's so
Just
much.
know that you're amazing. Thank you for, Jeremy, thank you for having me on because, once people understand breath work, they're great spokesmen for it, but getting someone to take a breath is always an interesting challenge. So
do people say no when you ask people to try? Have you had people say no?
You know what? It's really funny. I guess because I'm kind of smiley and easy that like most people are not afraid to try it. But if you ask someone to come try their first breathwork session at the beginning, it was really hard to get people to do a full breathwork session.
Sure.
Now when I offer people, they're like, because they've heard enough about me at this point, they're like, sure, I'll do it.
Right. Yeah, of course. That was Lauren Chelec Cafritz, her book, Breath Love. Our thanks to her for spending a few minutes talking about breath work in general. Quickly, I want to mention the sponsor of this episode is the Bravest Brewing Company. They brew some of the best non-alcoholic beers that you can get on the market. I actually tried, I don't remember if I had them before the last episode or not, but I did try the new raspberry, I think it's a Gosé, and the white ale. Those are tasty. I mean,
they are.
I do think they feel like a little bit more of a summer drink, but man, they're just a really nice, easy drinking, non-alcoholic beer. So if you're into that, click on the link on our website, thefitmess.com, and you can get 10% off there by using the code FITMESS10. And while you're there, go ahead and subscribe to the show through Apple Podcasts or Google or whatever it is you use to get podcasts. So you don't miss any future episodes. And if you missed a past episode, you guys, you and BioCurious Kayla talked a little bit about breathwork on the little Instagram video you guys did a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, we actually hit a couple of different topics, and it was a really good conversation. I enjoyed talking to her. But yeah, we hit on breathwork and just how it's so simple. I mean, we all breathe every single day just to stay alive, but you can be doing it so much better. Like there's a way to breathe to make you feel better. It's so crazy. Well,
and the fact that, like the story I shared with Lauren, the holotropic, I guess, hallucinogenic properties of that practice, again, one of the most profound things I've ever experienced in my life, and it was purely just a breathing technique. It was unbelievable, and it's honestly kind of frustrating that this method of healing, there are barriers to it. I mean, good luck finding a therapist or finding a way to get that covered by insurance. You know what I mean? Like, if I could go to a breathwork coach and have that covered by insurance, I would do that a lot because, again, I carried around a buzz for about 6 weeks of feeling better than I've felt in my entire life. And it was in part due to that work. And it's just that it's so easily accessible, but cost prohibitive because of the way that our medical system is set up.
I have to imagine you could find a psychologist that is covered through insurance that would do some breath work with you. Maybe not to that level, but maybe a good starting point.
Yeah, it's possible. Again, I'm a lazy dude. Perhaps I haven't done my research to find the right one. So if anybody knows of one in the Seattle area, please get in touch. I'd love to explore that and see if it's an option for me. Because again, just it can be life-changing, whether it's to that extreme or to just the simple act of taking intentional breaths and kind of figuring out where you are now and in that moment.
If you're not interested in going quite to that extreme, one of the ways of breathing that I taught during one of my yoga classes it's called box breathing. Have you heard of that?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So it's essentially, it's just you inhale to the count of 5, hold your breath for 5, for a count of 5, exhale for a count of 5, hold for 5, inhale for 5, and do that for 3, maybe 4 minutes. And that actually activates the vagus nerve in your body, which controls your rest and digest functions in your body. And it can take you from like being crazy, anxious, just down to a really calm level in like 3 minutes. If you do the breathing just like that, there's all kinds of breathing tricks that you can find out there, but certainly clear it with somebody before you try anything that may have hallucinogenic side effects.
Yeah. It's funny, though, you mentioned the box breathing. Headspace, a very popular meditation app that is not a sponsor and is not paying for this in any way. I use it as just a consumer. I pay for the subscription and all that. And we should call them. We should call them. They have these things called sleep casts, which are basically bedtime stories for grown-ups. And I love them. They are a critical tool in my toolbox for falling asleep, primarily when I go to bed before my wife because she finds them annoying and weird. But I love them. I sit in my pitch black basement bedroom listening to these stories, and I love them. But the box breathing is the setup to basically every one of the stories. And it's so annoying to me because I just want to get to the story. Like I'm still in such a get to the next thing mode. They're like, I don't want to do the breathing. Just do the story so I can fall asleep. But the breathing is a critical part of the method to try to help you get to sleep. So it's funny that you bring that up because it's every night I'm like, oh, God, fine, I'll do it. But I just want to hear the story.
But it's so useful, though. Like it's amazing. It's something like just breathing a different way and breathing with intention can have such a profound impact on your mental clarity.
Well, and it's funny because it's also such a foundation for everything else. If you start breathing with intention, it sets you up for eating with intention, which sets you up for acting with intention. And it's so fundamental and such a key building block in rebuilding that house of cards before one card comes down and brings the whole house down again for you. So speaking of, I suppose it's challenge time.
It is, and I've got one for you.
All right.
I heard you say earlier that you were, you needed to get back into meditation, and breath work is part of that meditation for you. So, and I'll do this as well, but I challenge you to 10 full minutes every single day of meditation on your breath work.
Meditating on my breath work.
Meditating on your breath work.
All right. Challenge accepted. And I'm sure that's exactly the thing I need to sort of rebuild my now collapsed and messy and flabby and tired house of cards.
It's a fit mess, man.
It is a fit mess. This is the thing. You know, I'm on social media too much. We've talked about that. And I scroll through all these just inspirational, just wonderful quotes and things that are supposed to help you. And I find that they kind of stress me out, because when I'm in this mode, you would think that's the kind of thing that would be the trigger to light the fire, to start taking better care of myself. But I find that it sort of grinds me down more. And then that's where I come back to the reason we started doing this, is that you and I are regular dudes. We're not life coaches. I'm using big air quotes. We're not therapists. We're not, fitness trainers. I mean, you have various certifications that make you much more of that than I am. But for the most part, I hope that this show serves as a way for people that struggle like us to relate and to know that they're not alone, and that we're not alone, and that this is what life is. It's the struggle, it's the mess, it's the hard part, with little hints of the successful moments and the happy moments and the light moments. And just going through all of this just makes us stronger, and we have to do it together, because otherwise it's a lonely and terrible existence. So
we can't all be perfect all the time. And to expect that is just crazy. And you're going to have moments like this. And this is why we decided on the name The Fit Mess, because it really is messy. You're going to have days where you don't work out or you don't eat right, and you're going to feel like shit the next day. And it's up and down, and there's valleys and troughs. It's not perfect, and no one can be perfect.
Yeah.
So that's why we sit on the show and interview experts and then try and implement what they're telling us, but we fail miserably a lot of times.
Far too often. But it's just, as my friend, it's reassuring that when we have these conversations, usually even before the show, where it's like, yeah, no, I'm doing the same thing. I'm in the same rut. I'm making the same mistakes. I'm doing the same stupid stuff. And, I don't know if it's seasonal, if it's just that's life or whatever. But again, it's comforting to know that it's not just me. So I hope
it's just life, man. It's just life. We've got kids, we've got things, we've got jobs. I mean, there's only so many hours in the day. And while I prioritize my health very highly, sometimes those other things get in the way.
Yep. Yeah.
Damn kids.
So I hope that this show serves as that for you, and I hope that it will continue to, if you have subscribed through whatever podcast catcher you use. With that, I think we're going to get out of here. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with a brand new episode. You'll find it at thefitmess.com or wherever podcasts are sold. Thanks so much for listening and sharing, a key part of this. Please share this anywhere you can to help spread the word and help grow our little show. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks at thefitmess.com.
See you, everyone.
We know this podcast is amazing and does not seem to lack anything, but we still need a legal disclaimer. Jeremy and Zach are not doctors. Please consult your physician prior to implementing any changes that you heard on this podcast. The listener assumes that Jeremy and Zach do not know what they're talking about, and that you'll do your own research on the topics talked about in this podcast. The hosts of this podcast are not liable for any physical or emotional issues that might occur directly or indirectly as a result of listening to this podcast.
Let's close with a deep breath. I feel better. You're not supposed to take that deep breath so close to the mic.